Uh, Hi, everyone. This is Friday, May 7th, and we welcome you to uh, I think it's our first series of 2025 for our town hall meetings. Our town hall meetings are a part of our Ease of Research initiative with the goal of removing micro hurdles and smoothing the path for our researchers to do more impactful research. As a part of that, we have very excited to welcome Dr. Todd Scherer. Uh, Todd's, we just learned, has a PhD in toxicology, and he is the Associate Vice President of Research and Executive Director for this office. His office leads many different areas which have impact on us for those of us who do material transfer agreements, data use agreements, intellectual property development, patents, uh, things which help us have a broader research reach and also a move to commercialization, which is an important part to translation of our work. So we are, Todd's got a team overseeing this. It's obviously a big uh, area, and we are excited to hear from Todd about his office and some of the, Todd, I think you will tell us some of the initiatives or what of the services are, and then we will have a question and answer session at the end for us to bring up any questions we have for Dr. Scherer. Thank you, Todd, for joining us.
You're welcome. I appreciate being invited. Are we ready for me?
Yes, we are. And we can put it on the slideshow. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
What are you seeing? Are you seeing my slideshow version or the
I am seeing, yeah, I'm seeing your presenter version with your notes on the side.
So how do I fix that? Did that do it?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay.
And you're the technology person. You are Office of Technology Transfer. Todd, we're not going to help you with that. Thank you. I'm joking.
Yes. Yeah, you laugh about that. I can't tell you if I had a nickel for every email I've gotten over the years because outside vendors think I'm the computer IT guy. Yeah.
We,
Well, thank you, Viva, for inviting me to speak. I take faculty partnerships incredibly seriously, and so do my team. And even though Bob dubbed me as the guy that's given more presentations to empty rooms, we know that we have to approach our faculty partnerships from as many different directions as we can. And I'd say the number one way still, after all these years, is sort of one-on-one faculty contacts. But whenever we can catch a group of people together, we appreciate that. I've been at Emory for 22 years now, but I have been in academic tech transfer for 35 years. So for 35 years, I've been working with faculty to help them develop their ideas, start their companies, get their MTAs and TUAs done. Yeah, I bailed out of science. I'm one of those people. I'm also a registered tech transfer professional, a certified licensing professional, and also a registered patent agent. I'm proud of the RTTP and CLP designations because I actually helped work with colleagues over the years to create those certifications so that we had a way for our newer people to sort of measure up and get the kind of certifications that we could use to help assure all of you that we were taking our training and education seriously. I want to start with some good news, high-level good news. And that is that there was a study that was done a couple of years ago in the Journal of Technology Transfer that ranked Emory number 3 in the world with regards to discovering new drugs. That's behind the National Institutes of Health and the University of California system. I'm sorry for the fact that it seems like we focus so much on drugs because my office cares about all areas of technology. It's just that because of the Orange Book, it's so much easier to track some of this data and information for therapeutics than it is for things like medical devices. But we're very proud of that. I myself have been involved in the technology transfer of 8 to 9 different FDA approved drugs, and that's without including the breakdown of the number of drugs that are in this ranking. The other thing that we're proud of, and this data is a couple of years old, is that Emory was #2 in licensing revenue in the Autumn Licensing Survey, the Association of University Technology Managers. That's my professional association. I'm a past president. The more recent survey that just came out we dropped to #4 or #5 because the sales of molnupiravir, our COVID drug, have dropped down. A lot of people might say, well, why would you brag about the revenue? What's incredible about licensing revenue is that it's driven by royalties. So if you're reporting huge royalty numbers, that means product is being moved and it means the public is benefiting. And in our case, lives are being saved. So I am very proud of that number as well, because it helps exemplify the impact that our research has had on the world. A lot of people know about the HIV drugs and the role that Emory has played. I just saw an ad for Biktarvy on TV last night. If you look closely when that commercial first comes on, you'll see that one of the drugs, emtricitabine, is listed that's in that drug cocktail. The EM stands for Emory. That's the HIV drug that Emory monetized its future royalties back in 2005 for $540 million. And Emory's drugs are in major drug cocktails for HIV through Gilead Sciences, but also through Glaxo as well. And we have other drugs and other products on the market. One of the technologies that I love the most that it's never made us any money is a telescoping mosquito catcher. It was disclosed by one of our research faculty, and it was designed to replace the old CDC backpack sprayer, which is pretty heavy. The telescoping thing was made with parts off the shelf from Home Depot, and you had PVC pipe that you could extend up under a bridge, and it had a little vacuum device and a screen, and you could suck mosquitoes in and collect them to monitor disease spread. We licensed that in numerous countries across the world at cost, because not everybody in the developing world has a Home Depot down the street like the rest of us do. So we get excited about those kinds of inventions too. I'm not going to bore you with all the details here. I did want you to know that we do try to take training, education, experience seriously. And this is just kind of a quick snapshot of our credentials of my extended licensing team. We've got a number of people that we have hired out of the research community here at Emory. You'll notice we have a lot of PhDs in the office, and that ends up being a good fit for us with regards to staffing. I also want you to know that we also engage your grad students in the work that we do in the tech transfer office. We typically have somewhere between 5 and 15 grad students that help us in the office. The program we have is currently an unpaid program, and there's always high demand for it. And we track our grad student and postdoc interns. You can see they're not all from Emory, but we give preference to Emory grad students and postdocs. But we track them, where they go, what their success rate is, and we know that we've now seen over 200 interns pass through our program. I think I just ran into 4 or 5 of our former interns that are working elsewhere across the country at our national meeting in Washington, D.C. Earlier this week. So we call this our faculty happiness factor. And unfortunately, faculty are not as happy as we would like them to be with us with regards to the turnaround time on materials transfer agreements and data use agreements. The bars are the number of incoming and outgoing agreements, and the line represents the average days to execution. So as you can see, that if those are average days, clearly some agreements are taking much longer than that. It's a tough area for us. The number of agreements keeps increasing and the complexity keeps increasing, data use agreements. We knew those were going to bring us to our knees 5 years ago, and they did. It used to be that a lot of data went in and out without an agreement, but now it all comes with an agreement. And a lot of this, of course, is clinical data, but not all of it's clinical data. And so those agreements have gotten very complex. It's despite our best efforts, the turnaround time in these positions that do this job is relatively short. You're driving into a snowstorm of contracts every single day that need to be executed. You're not always making friends along the way. You might get nasty emails from somebody who's rightfully not very happy with you. And so people just kind of burn out and they want to go on and do other things. So that's one of the battles we fight in this area, but we've increased the number of FTEs that we have focused on these agreements pretty substantially over the last 5+ years. Never feels like it's enough, and it feels like we're constantly retraining people because of the challenges of retaining them in these jobs. But I am happy to say that we were down 3 out of 4 full FTEs about a year and a half ago. At the moment, knock on wood, that has been sort of settled. But as you all saw, we've got a staff hiring freeze. So the next person that vacates one of these positions and walks out the door will now be down in FTE on MTAs and DUAs. We put a lot of effort into contacting our faculty. We send welcome packets to basically all new faculty hires that we track the list of new faculty hires, and we send emails out introducing ourselves and letting people know that our proactive technology scout will likely reach out to them for a meeting. We received 231 invention disclosures last year. That's new inventions flowing from not just the research enterprise at Emory, but also the clinical enterprise. Like I said, we have a technology scout whose sole job is to walk the halls, meet with faculty, talk with you about your wonderful research, and urge you to disclose new inventions. He had 163 total faculty meetings. That's 163 different faculty that he met with last year. 118 of those meetings were with what we call new faculty. And what we do is if faculty haven't worked with us for 3 years, we consider you a new faculty contact because we feel like you sometimes don't remember us for 3 weeks and certainly not 3 years. And we want to try to focus with this position on making new faculty contacts. My licensing team of 7 professionals, of course, has many, many meetings with faculty as well, but those are not included in these proactive meetings. 80 of those meetings were with clinical faculty or other clinical staff. And as you can see, we hit 79 different departments in those meetings. This is just kind of a quick, this is the annual number of US patent applications and number of US issued patents that we have seen since fiscal year 15. And if you saw this trend over a longer period of time, you would see that it continues to climb over the years. And you would see if you compared it against the national data that was cumulative of all research institutions, you would see that well, I'm sorry, I'm not there yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. So it takes 3 to 5 years for a patent to issue on average, even longer than for you to get a grant accepted by or a contract by the federal agencies. And not all patents issue, of course, and sometimes we abandon them along the way because we find prior art or other reasons why we think we might not be successful with a patent. Until now, I have been proud of the fact that I could say that we make merit-based patent decisions. It does not mean we're right. Can't possibly always be right because there is no crystal ball with regards to knowing what patent's going to issue and what technologies are going to be commercializable. But we make merit-based decisions. I am concerned about our ability to do that moving forward. The patent budget has been a challenge for us trying to stay under that budget in recent years. That's the challenge again this year. And of course, we all know we're facing some incredible national and global challenges this year that could threaten financial stability. Here is a slide that I was starting to get to that shows you that research is what drives innovation. It's just that you can't see it quite as well from this slide for 2 reasons. One is it doesn't go back far enough in time. And the second is that since the global pandemic hit, the number of new inventions reported, not just at Emory, but tech transfer offices across the country has gone down, despite the fact that funding has continued to increase. I suspect a lot of that's driven by the cost of research increasing and also the fact that some of those big grants that were awarded during the pandemic were not necessarily awarded to do the kind of research that's going to lead to new invention and discovery. We see when things like our technology scout position isn't staffed, like what happened in fiscal year 16, we see the number of inventions that get disclosed go down. I just found out as of Wednesday that my technology scout position is frozen because Michael Tannenbaum has just left at the end of the month to take a position with the Emory Biofoundry Institute, and we were in the process of collecting applications, but that position is now on hold, so we'll see what the future brings there. This shows you the total number of technologies, inventions that my office is working on. People are often surprised to know that it's almost 2,000 inventions that are in the pool of technologies that we manage collectively as an office. As things come in the door, we pursue some and others we don't. So when we decide not to pursue them and abandon them or release them, those are not included in this number. A lot of these technologies are in the land of the living dead, not through any fault of our faculty or clinical people, but simply because they're early stage and there's not additional funding or interest in some cases to continue to develop those. And so there they sit with the level of development that they have. And we know that on average, when we have a new invention, it's going to be potentially years ahead of where the marketplace is. This shows you the licensing revenue by year. And because we had a big hit technology that hit during the pandemic, that's the drug molnupiravir that is sold by Merck. That was invented by Drive. Well, it was invented by EIDD, technically speaking, but commercialized through Drive, Drug Innovation Ventures at Emory. Because that drug hit the market during the pandemic, it still only got emergency use authorization in the US, but it's actually approved in many other countries in the world. So the sales of that drug really drove up what we're seeing in licensing revenue. If I took this chart back far enough, you would see a $540 million, well, it was a $585 million peak in 2005 because we had a $540 million monetization and another 40 some million dollars in licensing revenue. I feel fortunate to be at Emory. There are many universities that are still waiting for one big hit technology. Emory has had two. And we also have a number of other drugs on the market, like Obizur for acquired hemophilia, and several others, as well as medical devices that have had a real impact that just kind of get drowned out by a really blockbuster kind of drug like this. We also lost an arbitration in about the 2011 timeframe to a $20 billion a year drug. It went to arbitration, and we've still got a patent that covers that drug, but we're unable to enforce that against our licensee because we lost the arbitration. We were that close to having a third big hit technology. This shows you the licensing distribution. I'm sorry, the distribution of license revenue in fiscal year 24. The amount is only 17,279,000 because the biggest chunk of that licensing revenue I just showed you in the slide prior to this one stays at Drive. My office licenses to them and they sublicense. So the delta between what they have to pay, Drive has to pay me through the license, and what they get from their sublicensee, they get to keep. It's not subject to distribution for the IP policy. So 20 million of that, well, 17 million of that went through the IP policy. And this shows you kind of the breakdown because we share our licensing revenue with a number of different stakeholders. As you can see from this chart, there's a contributor share. That's the percentage of licensing revenue that goes to the inventors or creators in the case, or authors in case of copyrightable works. The department share is what goes to the department, and the asterisk is meant to say that faculty inventors can direct up to 50% of that revenue into their lab, but there's a cap. Then there's a school or center share and a general university share. And that's how we split up the revenue. If you were to compare this distribution formula against universities across the country, you'd find that this is kind of in the middle. Roughly a third, so to speak, to the inventors is fairly common. There are a few places that have a higher percentage that, and Emory did too prior to 2002. Emory directed 40% of its revenue, a flat 40% to faculty inventors. It's always been interesting to me because oftentimes what drives faculty more is the opportunity for discretionary lab funds more than the personal wealth. And although that's often the case until the revenue starts to come in the door, and then people care more about that. But a lot of times, researchers are just interested in getting more funds into the lab to send graduate students to scientific meetings or to support research or buy supplies. So, what's on the horizon? And I will stop. This is my last slide. There are a couple of process improvements that are already underway. One of them is a low-risk outgoing DUA process, and we implemented this almost a year ago, but it's not very heavily utilized. As a matter of fact, I think we've only had one DUA submitted through this process. So the idea was to put you as researchers more in control of your own destiny by allowing you to handle your own outgoing data use as long as it met 8 criteria associated with being low risk. And then if you did that, there's a template that's already been approved by Emory. You can, if you want to, take it, email it to your colleagues, and when it comes back, we execute it out of the tech transfer office. And the idea is we're not going to double check your work. You're accountable, and you have to certify, and you have to take a very short training. And I know training is a bad word, but there's about a 15 or 20-minute sort of training course there that you have to take and check the box. And if you do that, then we don't double check it. All we do is sign it. I'd like to see that utilized more. I also have some hopes that maybe that could spread to other types of low-risk contracts, because we all agree that sometimes it feels like we've spent a lot of time on contracts and issues that don't carry a lot of risk at the end of the day. But they generally need an institutional decision in order to accept that risk, just to make sure that not just central administration is okay with that, but the schools are okay with that, because at the end of the day, the risk is usually theirs. I think everybody knows by now there's a new grants management system that's underway. The implementation of that is called Insight. It is a holy grail one-stop solution for all of us to use the same software system instead of the ones that were individually created for our offices. And we're well into the process of putting that into place. I think that's going to take more front-end time for faculty and RAS staff to make sure that information gets entered. But the nice thing about that is if we get a complete package of information on the front end, that'll help save some of the delays, as well as dual data entry. That'll help address some of the delays that come along with processing things. Some of the new initiatives that are up and running but still emerging, and I think incredibly interesting for those of us that are focused on innovation and commercialization, is an Emory Drug Development Fund. Those funds are being repurposed from molnupiravir revenue by the president to create this drug development fund. It's a venture-like fund. It's still an internal fund. It's made 3 investments so far. It will invest in companies for an equity position, but it also has invested pre-company stage by just putting research funds back into the lab. And with the idea that we'll also engage CROs to help reduce risk and create value in our early stage technologies and get them ready to be spun out. The Emory Biofoundry Institute is similar to the Emory Drug Development Fund, except it's more focused on medical devices and healthcare IT types of technologies. Haiyan Fu in pharmacology started the Center for New Medicines a few years ago, but he continues to kind of push that forward. And in the current round of awards they're looking at making through the Center for New Medicines, they actually engaged my team and will help do prior art searches so that as they make awards to fund projects under the center, they will be able to make sure that we've thought about the intellectual property position, because if the goal is to get new medicines on the market and there is no IP protection, then there'll be an even more difficult path for those new therapies to get to market. Emory Healthcare is developing a fund as well, or has already developed one. They've had at least one round of submissions, and I'm not sure exactly where they're at in the award process. But I think we'll continue to see these kinds of things develop at the institution, other than the fact that there are a bunch of threats some of which are listed below, and that is we're not sure what's going to happen to research funding, of course. We're not sure what's going to happen to the indirect cost rate, and where we're going to end up with that. There are other things that are challenging the financial stability of the institution. And something that's near and dear to my heart is hiring freeze on staff positions, because if you've got a faculty happiness factor and you endeavor to make faculty happy and you lose staff or you can't get staff to keep pace with the growth, you know you're going to have a much more difficult time keeping faculty happy. I'm going to stop there, and I would be happy to entertain any questions or feedback or advice from you all.
Thank you so much, Todd. That's a lovely overview. Um, I think I'm going to start with a question because, I can tell you from my personal experience, and I really do appreciate the fact that I'm an active researcher, and hence I get to interact with all these offices and get to understand some of the factors which I face. I think one of the most common our interaction with your office is the data use agreement and material transfer agreements, right?
Mhm.
And I remember when I joined I joined as a faculty, I was going to do a material transfer agreement and DUA with Michigan, where I came from. And first, I couldn't even understand who to contact, because we couldn't, I was calling around. Finally, I just called the phone number and Raj picked up. Raj from your office picked up the phone number, and, I had a contact. So that made my life easier. But I just didn't even, and that made me realize some issues from our end. You try to do the outreach, but we need to have outreach from our department side, that researchers who are coming, we orient them to various services at Emory. How do they use them? Who are our contacts, right? And that's, I think, an area for us to improve upon, which we want to do with your office. Because as you said, right now, everything's on hold, but recruitment's a very big part of growth for our department. And we want to make sure the people we are bringing in are aware of this. And even our new faculty, right? Like people who are getting our junior faculty. But what can we do, Todd? You bring up this low risk outgoing DUA process. I really like that. Same thing for the material transfer agreements and all that. How can we make, like, what can be, thinking outside the box, what can be done with the major universities who are our big collaborators to make this process much better? Let me tell you, I have one bigger one I'm trying to do with Michigan right now. It's so much back and forth. And here I have very responsive people from both sides, right? Even then, it's just been so difficult. And, I in fact emailed Raj before our meeting here, and, but can there something be done for us to understand maybe better the nuances and give you that information beforehand, or follow a standard template across the universities? What can be done so that the workload can be decreased on your people and life can be made easier for us?
Yeah. I wish I had a simple answer to that question. I can tell you over the last 3 decades, I've been associated with many efforts to try to do that, and none of them have had the impact we thought they would. For example, I don't know, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, through Autumn, we put together a uniform biological materials transfer agreement.
Okay.
And the idea was that that would be a template that everybody could be used. And here we are 25 years later, and it's still not being utilized to the extent that it should. Now, there are some reasons why that is the case. Not everything fits into a template agreement, unfortunately.
Mm.
Um, but those are the kinds of things I think we have to be. I mean, I think it takes a toolbox approach. We have never found a magic bullet. And until we find a magic bullet, we have to continue to try to hammer on it from as many directions as we can. So we must continue to try to use things like master agreements and things like template agreements. And if we can get used to the small amount of risk that comes along with using template agreements, or to be honest with you, I've talked to my counterpart at Stanford, who's since retired, and she said something to me that I agree with. I would advocate for moving towards a world where we didn't use MTAs.
Mm.
But the problem is there are always going to be some cases where you have to use them. And the question is, are people going to abide by that or not? The other thing that could happen is maybe one of the potential positive outcomes that could come out of the chaos that's occurring with the focus on universities and the federal laboratories is some streamlining. We've long waited for the federal agencies to get harmonized with regards to how we do business with them. So maybe somehow out of all of that, there will be if there's anybody left to have the conversation within the agencies, maybe there's the opportunity to try to reduce some of the administrative burden that comes along, and materials transfer agreements are just a great example of the additional administrative burden that comes along with managing research. So those are all ways that I think we need to try to go at it. A grants management system that streamlines some of this, templates, master agreements, looking for new solutions like the low risk outgoing DUA process. That's why I'm hoping we can get more faculty to use that. If we can demonstrate the faculty use it and it works, then I'd be in a much better position to make a case for extending that to materials transfer agreements as well.
That sounds great. Thank you, Todd. Charlie, I know you have to leave. Did you have any questions?
No, the question I was asking about the low risk option that you were talking about, whether you could expand on that a little bit more. Like, what is a low risk?
Yeah, I'll try to be. I'll avoid trying to recite for you what the 8 conditions are because I'm afraid I'll get something wrong. But basically, it's got to be a de-identified data set. For example, it shouldn't be a great big large data set that might be a significant proportion of the collection regionally or for a patient population. If it is so it's those kinds of things we're sort of looking at and asking for faculty to certify. One of the biggest challenges, though, is people saying it's de-identified and then it's not.
Hmm.
I mean, we go through this over and over and over again. And what is determined as a de-identifier or an identifier in a data set is pretty well established, and it's well embedded in the website and stuff where we've got to process this. But it's the kind of thing that people can get wrong. So what I hope happens is we don't have a bunch of examples of faculty being wrong about whether there are identifiers used when they said there weren't, because if that's the case, that would be the kind of thing that could potentially undermine institutional confidence in continuing to use that. Now, that hasn't happened so far because, again, we've only had one low-risk DUA in over 12 months be submitted through that process. We guessed when we did our numbers, when we made the case for putting this in place, we had guessed that there might be somewhere around 100 plus or minus agreements that would meet these criteria a year.
So I guess we need to advertise that better then, because I think, or is it on the website? If you go to DUA, does it ask you if yours is a low risk as the criteria given on the website?
I won't try to quote for exactly where all it's showing up. Yes, on the website, we put it in our ORA communications. My office tries to promote it. Anything you can do to help us promote it would be great.
Okay.
It seems like the harder we try to get the word out, it's just the more information overload everybody is facing. But
Sure.
it's been promoted through a number of different routes. And the other thing I've challenged my staff to do is if you see one that looks like it would have met that criterion, push back on the faculty and beg them if you have to push it through the low risk system process so that we can test that process. So we're trying to use as many ways as we can to get it communicated. But as you know, everybody's got so much information to track these days.
No, but that's a great idea. We can definitely try to help with that as long as we can get access to information on how to promote that. If your office can pass that on to us, we can put that in one of our newsletters. Kanika can help us with that. So, Todd, that'll be great if you can ask somebody from your office to give us some information on what you have been sending out.
Yeah.
All right, questions, everyone. It's open. You can just I don't see anything in the chat, but if we have any questions, you can just, it's a small enough group where you can just unmute. And Chelsea, I see you on the list there. So I'm going to ask you, did you know about this low risk outgoing MTA thing?
DUA.
DUA, sorry.
Yeah, it's been something that my team's been getting more familiar with because we kind of have like a lot of different types of studies going on, but it's still something that I'm getting the hang of. So this has been helpful.
Excellent. That's
Yeah, I mean, the
wonderful.
reality is right. You still got to go and check out the information. You got to think about it. You got to take the training. You got to remember that that's there because there's 100 other different ways you have to submit and have things handled related to research. I get it. It's all just unfortunately part of a lot of noise, and just making sure you understand one more option you've got on the menu of things you can do is just it's not easy to do, but.
The other thing I was thinking was, John, I think through your office and some other offices, we put together these training courses for our clinical coordinators, right? And maybe including some information on how to execute DUAs and MTAs, which can help the faculty, might be helpful, or I don't know, maybe they already do that.
Hi, Viva. Thanks for the question. So currently we don't have anything of this realm here or this nature in our trainings. A lot of our training is thrust towards the clinical research team, the study team, and not for the PIs. Now, with that said, I do PI consultations, and if this comes up in our conversation during that consultation, I will definitely lead them to this here. So with that said, Todd, this information is available on your website.
Yes. And I was actually in the process of sending an email. I'm going to copy a couple of my folks to make sure that we at Viva, and I'll add you too, John, to that to make sure we get you the information because, like I said, it's been promoted and written up in a number of different ways as well as where the link on the website is.
Perfect. Thank you. Great collaboration here. Thanks, Viva.
Thank you, John. I think we might want to consider that because I think if the teams we can have some training for, actually, this is a good thought, Todd. If, like, for example, doing a DUA and MTA, if I could train my lab manager to help me with that, uh, that it works in the end anyway, like that. The lab managers get trained or they figure it out. They don't get trained. They figure it out. They ask their peers or something happens. But maybe if we had some sort of training sessions like that or some module where we can have our lab folks take that module so that they can help us with some of these because, we sort of do a MTA for every mouse we have to get, for every plasmid we have to get, right? So there's there is a lot of that. So I don't know if there is any training modules, but that might be something for us to consider.
Yeah, well, like I say, and part of the challenge is if let's just say you need 20 or 25 MTAs and DUAs over the course of the year to run your lab.
Yeah.
One of those qualifies for a special process. And you've got to learn a new special process or be aware of it for only 1 out of 20 or 25, then it just isn't that helpful to you. I guess
But
the thing we need to do is to be able to open up that kind of a process for more of those things, and MTAs again would be a great example of that.
yes, opening it for more, but also in general, having a DU and an MTA training thing. I mean, so there is, it's interesting. I tell my interns or students, there's no question's a stupid question. Sometimes in research, people think we know everything. People might ask me, Vibha, do you know how to apply for a DUA or MTA? Every time I have to go find the website, I have to try to find it, then I have to try to answer those questions. And pe people think somebody taught me that. No, nobody taught me in medical school or research school how to do an MTA or a DUA, right?
Right.
And then I asked Raj some stupid question. Raj, what did this mean? and then he has to spend his time explaining it to me or sending me an email on that. So that's where I was talking about, was having, and I'm sure there might be on your website a training module on how do you do an MTA or how do you do a DUA. Is it there?
I am trying to think whether we would have a training module that would be sort of that concise and sort of be written up that way.
Definitely something for us to consider, Todd, because we do attribute things to people which they might not have, and sometimes there is that the people just feel ashamed to ask and they don't ask.
Right.
But
Agreed.
then they do it wrong. And they make the workload of your people much higher. People like me. Okay, good. Two things we talked about today. We're going to try to figure out the low risk outgoing, Kanika, for our points from the meeting. Our MTA information available. Todd will be sharing that with us. And we will also look at if there's any training modules for DUA or MTA, and we'll try to figure out the need for that in our DOM research community. Marisa, you have a question, and if you want to introduce yourself, I'm sorry,
No,
I don't know.
hey, this is Marcia Torlak. I'm from Urology. I manage the clinical research unit. You just covered the question about getting other lab or clinical research unit personnel involved in reviewing those low risk DUAs or MTAs.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And I did just post the link. If you click on it,
Okay, you
It will-
posted in the chat.
it'll take you to the low risk outgoing data use agreement process with all of the links you need to make it happen.
Todd, did you put it in the chat? I don't
Yes. Is it not showing up?
Kanika, do you see it? Maybe mine is not
It's
uploaded.
right after, should be right after Marisha, but right before Kanika's. It's showing up on mine as me posting it.
Oh, here, I see it. I
Okay.
got it.
Yeah, so if you
I am opening it right now. Yes, and Todd, if you want to open it, just show you can show everyone. Please go ahead and do that. You are on your Zoom if you want to just open that. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, so sorry. I thought I lost my Zoom contact. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, it's right on your website.
Yeah.
Low
and
risk criteria.
Yep, goes through the criterion, and it tells you what what it means to be de-identified.
Nice. And it was that under resources? How did you get to that, Todd? Faculty, under faculty? No.
So what I did is I actually went to resources and I went to forms right here, low risk. There
Gotcha.
may be multiple ways of getting it. That's the way I did it right there.
Yeah. So I think under resources, if we had a small training session, well, maybe you guys already have under DUA, FUAs. Yeah, why do I need? You have everything there. Maybe we could just make it a little bit easier for our folks and do something more, but yeah. A lot of times the problem is, Todd, like you said, there is so much information. It's just that we are not using that information.
Yeah, right.
And,
If there were only
that's
10
the problem.
things you had to be
Yep.
responsible for, it'd be a lot easier to track them, wouldn't it?
Yes. Excellent. All right. Any other questions? I don't see anything else in the chat. If not, I know Todd's a very busy person. We should let you go, Todd. We really thank you for coming here, spending the time with us, and we look forward to continuing this collaboration with you. We do have a after session feedback, Kanika, you posted that. And so please provide us with any feedback you have about the sessions. And everyone, happy Friday and have a lovely weekend. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks again, Todd. And thank you everyone for attending. Bye.